Touch Delay viewers, today I'm in conversation with Tenzin Tsundue about his recent campaign, Walking the Himalayas. And we'll also talk a little about the meaning of activism and how it has changed over the years. Tenzin Tsundue is a poet and activist who has also been arrested 16 times by Indian authorities. His book of poems, Kora, first published in 2002, has beautifully captured the experiences of a Tibetan refugee in India. Moreover, his work, My Kind of Exile, was awarded the Outlook Picador Award for non-fiction in 2001. First of all, I want to congratulate you for completing the campaign, Walking the Himalayas, and thank you for taking out your time for this interview.
Thank you. Small correction. The arrest record of 16, it's not only India. And my first arrest as an activist happened in Tibet by the Chinese. And for me, this is a distinction. As someone who was born in India, I got arrested first in Tibet and jailed for 3 months and later got thrown out of that. And so therefore overall it's been 16 times that I've been to jail.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Speaking of the campaign itself, you've walked around the Himalayas for 4 months now. What was your overall objective when you first started out from Dharamshala? And do you think you were able to achieve what you had first envisioned at the beginning of this journey?
I think what it really later kind of spread out and organically developed so beautifully and elaborate, and it's beyond a dream. I did not think that it would actually flourish like this, in the way I was able to meet so many people in so many different parts of India that I'd never even heard about. I had initially planned that I would go to some of the important marked towns and cities. But I also planned it in such a way that, of course, I would cover the 5 Indian Himalayan states. That was the basic idea. But I also went with the flexibility that I would allow myself to go and see places and meet and keep enough space that I'm able to stay anywhere, move anytime, and there was no time bound. I should finish it within 3 months or 4 months or whatever. I was keeping enough time for myself, and that really helped. That I was flexible. I was able to spend much more time, and towards the end in Arunachal Pradesh, I felt if only India could go on beyond Arunachal, I could still continue to travel. But there was a time when I reached Miao, Tibetan refugee camp. To the south was Burma, and to the north is Tibet, and there was no other places to cover. So I completed that and came down to Guwahati and then finished it.
Wonderful. One of the main focuses you said was about spreading awareness of the border security and at the Indo-Tibet border. You made a distinction that we have to call it that. I remember you saying at the last screening also that the partition between India and Tibet through the Himalayan border post China's invasion is a discussion nobody wants to have. Why do you think this is so?
I think what had happened with India and India's relationship, right from the beginning, India came out with this very highly romanticized idea of China. China was at the time rising as a new power in Asia, in the world, in the form of Mao Zedong's Communist Party. So Indian intellectuals, especially the socialist bent Indian intellectuals who were shaping the policies of New India, of course there was the Commonwealth policy. At the same time, there was this quiet, unsaid aim that China is a new rising power and we're going to be friends with them. So that's how Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai got shaped into as India's foremost important policy towards China. And later in 1962, when China invaded Arunachal Pradesh and captured almost entire region of Arunachal Pradesh and maintained that rule for a few months, that was the time when India was completely kind of disappointed with its own policy of friendship with China, And then it also marked a sense of fear towards China, and this froze the relationship with China for a long time. And then, the relationship never really developed beyond that. Governments subsequently, both Congress and the BJP continued to champion friendship with China, while in mainstream Indian population, no one really liked China. There's sense of fear, at the same time distrust. I think that has really marked kind of a contradictory position, where Indian people did not have a good idea or did not feel good about China, but government of India subsequently continued to champion friendship with China and try to trade and different other things, until it came down to Galwan Valley massacre, which kind of summed up India's relationship with China, where we now saw that India today even officially recognizes China as the enemy, and even behind Pakistan there is China's hand in insinuating Pakistani terrorist activities on India. So you see, all of this has really shaped India's policy. So therefore, in India there was no clear-cut mention of Tibet out of fear for China, and also appeasement policy that has been going on for some time. And as someone who is born in India, I myself, I continue to say I'm as Tibetan as I am Indian. So I take the right to speak about these issues. So therefore, I have been pressing throughout my journey from Ladakh to Arunachal, in between the states like Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, or UP and Bihar and Sikkim, entire area of Uttarakhand. Everywhere I've been talking about this. But interestingly, it is only the mainstream India who looks at the Himalayas as China border. But in the Himalayan region, people there, they always consider Himalayan border as Tibet border. तो वो खुद मेरे को बोलते हैं कि यही तो Tibet है ना, because the people in the Himalayas, they always had this trade relationship with Tibet. In fact, their relationship was closer to Tibet than the mainstream India. So you see, people in the Himalayas teach us the history, religion and culture, and many other in-depth relationship with Tibet and the Himalayas, and they say that this is Tibet border.
So connecting to what you said just about how we also connect to the culture in the Himalayas, you screened the escape of the Dalai Lama from Tibet. What was the reason for sharing? What is the significance of sharing the story of His Holiness? And as you said, you must have met a lot of people during the campaign. And what was the response you got? What were the key responses that you thought were very interesting? Like the one you just...
Right. Chukila, see, when it comes to the issue of Tibet, His Holiness, people in the Himalayas, I haven't met a single person who is not aware of either Tibet or His Holiness the Dalai Lama. For people in the Himalayas, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is not only a Dharma Guru, but he is also kind of a god. That's how people in the Himalayas look at him. So His Holiness is the common bonding between Tibet and the Himalayas. So of course, symbolically and also practically in real life, people daily worship His Holiness. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the connecting point. And therefore, a film about him, and that too about his escape, what difficult situation led His Holiness the Dalai Lama to leave his country and entire a story behind, and had to seek asylum in India. When we showed this film to the people, they were saying, दलाई लामा हमारा धर्म गुरु है, लेकिन उसको अपनी निजी जिंदगी में इतनी मुश्किल परिस्थिति से गुजरना पड़ा, हमको पता नहीं थे, इसलिए हम ये फिल्म देखने के बाद हमको शर्म लगता है. The kind of very strong responses from the Himalayan people. They were saying that although the Dalai Lama is like our God, But we didn't know that he himself had to undergo such difficult, trying situation when China invaded Tibet and when he had to leave his own country. So it's a response that no other activity could have provoked. This film, which is called Escape of the Dalai Lama from Tibet, a film made by Bombay-based film company called Rangre's Films. This film was made for Epic TV channel. It was first shot in Spiti Valley in 2015, and in 2016-17 it was broadcast all over India by Epic TV channel. But most of the people in the Himalayas have not seen this. So this film was, in 1.5 hour film in Hindi, was introducing the entire story of Tibet, the recent happening, the story of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and the reason why China is sitting across the Himalayas today. And it's such a shocking thing for people in the Himalayas to understand how a part of their life was shut out for them. They used to freely go across the Himalayas, go to Tibet for pilgrimages, for trade, marriages, family relationships. And today they are not able to go there. So this film is story of that part of the Himalayas which they are denied of today. So the responses were amazing, and I felt that this film really bonded the people of Tibet and the people in the Himalayas.
That's very exciting. Thank you for sharing your experience. Now my next two questions would be focusing on you a little bit. So you have been a vocal critic of the Chinese government through your writings and protests every time any Chinese dignitaries come to India. And you are also a Rangzin proponent. Given everything, world politics, CTA's stance on middle way, massive repressive policies by the Chinese government, increasing every year, are the odds against the independence movement getting more complicated? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the basic idea of independence of Tibet, it's enshrined in every Tibetan's heart, and there's no doubt about it. Especially those who are inside Tibet. They have been protesting, they have been risking their life, they have been burning themselves in self-immolations, 155 self-immolations since 2009. So it's a clear-cut mandate from Tibetans inside Tibet. But unfortunately, there has been a politicking about political stance in the exiled Tibetan community. Many people felt that if you speak for autonomy, if you speak for middle way approach, it is not only exiled government's policy, it has been proposed by His Holiness, and therefore it suited that if you speak for it or if you stand for it, you needn't do so much, but you seem to create this image that you are Dalai Lama loyalists. So this Dalai Lama loyalist politics has really disturbed the Tibetan freedom movement. I think whether you are, Umelam's middle way approach, seeking autonomy, or people like us standing for independence, no one is questioning His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is, even for me, for everybody, is the ultimate leadership of the Tibetan community. That there shouldn't be any doubt about it. I know some of the biggest proponents, some who are elder to me, and I did not see that questioning. What I've seen is disagreements, and this should be respected in the Tibetan community. And if we are not able to, respect this kind of disagreements, then there's no point of calling ourselves democracy. Whole idea of democracy, which I think was one of the biggest achievements of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, was, encouraged, inspired, and literally nurtured in the Tibetan community, and that it has become successful by Tibetan people's participation. There was a point of time when in the 1960s, 70s, even up to 80s in the Tibetan refugee camps, some of the more richer people used to boss around and they would dictate terms. Today, no. Even Gyakpo in a small camp or in a village, a leader for about 50 or 100 people are also elected, and decisions come out of consensus. This way of making decisions, and also respecting, even if you did not like certain person, if that person has been elected by majority, you have to respect this. Yeah? You may continue to disagree, but you must respect this. So this culture of democracy is, I think, the best thing that had happened in the Tibetan community in the recent 50, 60 years. But of course, this is a big achievement because bringing a community who is tribal, provincial, sectarian politics, and so much of divide within Tibet. We have now come to a position where we have elected a leadership, and this is big achievement, and we have done that in 60 years. Good. We are proud of this. At the same time, it is coming to a point where today, because of the divide between two factions, so there's a Lobsang Sangye faction, there is Pemba Sering factions. I think this has really divided the Tibetan community, and we have not been able to convene our own parliament for some time, and even the cabinet has not been able to function properly. And both the leaders must take responsibility on this, and also people who are on both sides and saying, I know I'm right and they are wrong. In any community, there's no black and white. We all make mistakes, and ultimately we have to really come to this urgent point where we are leading our freedom movements, and China is out there to basically decimate Tibet, sinicize, homogenize entire Tibet, and they may very well be able to do that if only the West is not already rising now. Yeah, so it's a very crucial time for Tibetans to unite under His Holiness's leadership, under one CTA Tibetan government in exile. We may continue to have differences with whoever the Sikong, but whoever is elected must be respected and must be given that space to run the administration properly. If we are able to do this, we must look at the larger picture, because if we keep dividing, the community becomes smaller and smaller. But if we unite, you see our strength becomes bigger. We have both the factions coming together for a cause of Tibet. I think that should be the true patriotism that every Tibetan must pledge for. And this is what His Holiness the Dalai Lama would love Tibetans to be doing today. So this is affecting the movement. You see, there was a point of time when one NGO, for example, Tibetan Youth Congress, leads a movement. Today, people immediately look at this from their divided mind. Is it for independence? Is it for autonomy? Is it for this faction? Or is it for that faction? We are already divided. We are not able to come together. And this is affecting the movement. So therefore, I really plead with every Tibetan, whichever faction you had always be. Of course, you would love certain personalities, but your love for certain personalities must not divide the community, the entire community. And we must come together. And His Holiness is 86. Even at this age, he's still working almost every day. And therefore, there's no space for retirement. There's no space for divide. Now is the time to really come together and stand together as Tibetans.
Right, I'm glad you brought this up. We have to talk about this. The disagreements that are happening. Disagreements is a good thing in a democracy, but there have been instances recently that have plagued the community. But so my next question somehow touches on that, but it's more about activism, how we view activism and how it has changed over the last years. Many in our community have time and again, jadedly has said that the activism in the exile landscape has waned over the years. I remember one interview with Jan Obula during the last Rangzin conference in 2018. with Voice of Tibet, where he said that it has gone worse. But I wanted to know what is your assessment of our current scenario, and what kind of activism you think we are indulging in now, and how can we improve that?
Right. I've seen, and we all observe that the landscape of Tibetan political activism has changed over some time. Right in the beginning, right up to like 1980s, up at that time, there was hardly any political activism as such. The maximum what we would do is come out in the street and do this protest once in a while. But we were in the survival period. We were rebuilding a new life, and we were creating structures like schools and hospitals, and refugee camps were settling down. People are learning new languages, trying to understand the idea of democracy and how the media functions, how things like postal service or banking system were working. So now we are doing quite well. And then it came to a much more active political activism. This kind of activism, which was mostly based on symbolic protest actions, where we all come in the street, and I myself have taken part in many of those places. In some, I've even led protest rallies. Then came the advocacy period, where we are now able to meet with members of parliament, either in India or in foreign countries. So political activism, we've seen it has been changing over many times, and then we in the year 2000s, we've been training our own youngsters, and so even in there, I was able to participate. Firstly as a trainee, and then later as a trainer. Now that I'm 48, I've been able to speak with many other youngsters in trying to encourage them to take more participation in the Tibetan activism, and also grow more intellectually and get more connected in local population, learn new languages and learn tactics over this. So I'm basically very even as of now, I'm very inspired that we now have almost about 70 to 80,000 Tibetans who are citizens of many other countries in Europe and America and Australia, and they are doing fantastic work. There was a point of time people used to say, no, not at all. I see that those who are going to foreign countries, they suddenly get kind of activated, just like we have a SIM card being activated. They suddenly are activated. They're asking for new books and Tibetan national flags for them, because now they have to explain their face. Dharamsala de ni ani keje tinge me ani chatung kiburistang chen ani chik pheba yin la de de. But the moment they go out to foreign countries, they are asked every day where you're from, what do you do. And they have to say that we have lost the independence of our country, we are working. So in that way, they have to get doing something. And that, I think, has really helped really come to a new level. But what we have also seen after the these series of self-immolations from 2009, especially 2011 and 12, really acute time, so many reports of self-immolations. This has affected us so much, psychologically. You see, we are all living in free country, however unfree we feel as refugees. And even in foreign countries, they may be citizens of those countries, but then there is a one part of your mind which is unfree, which constantly says that you are not like others, you have a special responsibility. And this may be a sense of responsibility, but when you hear these cases of self-immolations from Tibet, it creates a sense of guilt in all of us. So this is a very important factor to remember. The guilt factor then starts to make you think, how do we ask them to stop this self-immolation? No one wants to hear another case of self-immolation. No one wants to be shocked by another case. And I myself, as an activist, it always shuddered me from deep inside every time there has been a case of self-immolation. But moment it happened, it becomes immediately our duty to tell this story to Indian media, to outside people, and get them to know about this and get support, and also ask them to put pressure on China to stop this repression in Tibet. This was there. This has affected us so much. I think to a point that the Tibetan community has started to spread to say we should restrain from our political activism, because this is one of the important a section of the Tibetan community were thinking that our political activism was either encouraging them or further activating Tibetans inside Tibet, and because of which this was bringing more repression from the Chinese authorities in Tibet. I think that mentality has affected us, and therefore we kind of restrained ourselves. So you see, from 2012 onwards, for a long time, the political activism has almost died down. I did not agree on that at all. The idea of this monster who is breathing down your neck, and you think that if you move less, if you are more obedient to the monster, you hope that you would not be eaten or you would not be hurt by the monster. We do not understand this monster that we are talking about, the Chinese Communist Party led by Xi Jinping today, is out there to homogenize the entire China and Chinese occupied countries. Tibet, East Turkestan, Southern Mongolia, Manchuria, everybody. Now even Hong Kong, and they are now hoping to disturb Taiwan. So there is no way we can appease the monster. We have to deal with the monster. It doesn't necessarily mean you do it violently. Of course, I believe in non-violence, and I believe that there is a way of dealing with it. But then keeping silence and appeasing the monster is not a way. So therefore, we have to be more active in lobbying, advocacy, speaking to media, telling our story through arts, by writing, poetry, theatre, cinema, cartooning, and animation. We can be much more powerful if we use these forms. And of course, with Lakar movement, mushrooming from Tibet, it has hugely invigorated us in a very different way. It has connected us also. So therefore, at the moment we are doing, but then political activism has changed a lot. But then what has been silenced, or where we felt we could appease the monster, that I think we had taken a wrong step. And we must remain active, work differently. We needn't necessarily go down the street with placards every day. I myself do not do. I have started to resort to many other creative means. This is what is needed now, especially among NGOs, among individuals. And individuals should not wait for NGOs or few groups. Anybody can take up activism, and not only awareness building, but directly confronting the Chinese authorities and demanding freedom for Tibet.
But as you said that the Tibetan, there are NGOs who are actively participating in activism. Do you think it's because, as you said, that the public is not really, they have silenced themselves in this way? What about the bike rallies, about the placard activism that we have in the community right now? Do you think it is a time to change the tactic, to make new strategies, and to strengthen, or is it also about how the international community has now, looking at the Tibetan issue, they have also stopped giving the support that they used to? How do you navigate with this kind of conundrum that we have?
So there are two things in this about the international campaign and also bike rallies and placard bearing protests. No one is making a collective decision in either doing a bike rally or a placard raising protests. These are done by individuals or groups, and they will anyhow continue to do it. when you are asking this question, how should we do? Then, of course, this can be a discourse to discuss or share opinion. But I think all the NGOs, they are working in their own way. Lobbying MPs is one smart and effective manner, but then lobbying with corporate companies or strengthening financially both the activism and also the education and health spheres also. So you see, there are different ways of working, but what is needed is looking at the changing situation, the political situation on the outside, whether it's India-China relationships or trade relationships, and now because of the pandemic, new opportunities are coming about, and we must adapt to this and continue to churn out new ways of telling our story and reaching out to people and making sense of this. And especially one important thing is this way of calling for charity, for support. This is something we must completely dismantle and change. No one is coming out there to support you out of charity. No one. Individually, maybe. But as a government, as political party, they always look for their own interest in your interest. So we need to understand this politically. And if we are able to play this game, we may be able to, insert the interest of Tibet, independence of Tibet, in the interest of India, in the interest of Asia, in the interest of business, in the interest of pandemic, in the interest of European and American politics also. And this is what the educated new crop of youth and leaders must play this role. Yeah. So this is very important. If we are able to do this, we are there. Otherwise, we'll keep on saying they are not supporting us. We are a victim. This is not time to cry. This is not time to play the victim. This is time to go out there and be smart and insert independence of Tibet as an interest in other people's politics. If we are able to do that, we will get there.
That was all my questions. Just to end on a light note, when can we expect your next writing project to be out? And our viewers they're curious to know when your next book is coming out.
Yeah, my writing has suffered a lot because of my political activism. You see, the political activism gets this sense of immediacy and urgency, and you get results right now. Writing appeals to people's conscience. But what writing also does is it becomes history. Yeah, people forget activism, but writing is there forever. So it is own appeal and its own weightage to it. But the writer is never stopping, never pausing. The writer is constantly writing in the head, and that makes someone a writer. You needn't necessarily to be published or either online or or offline. That person is a writer who is constantly writing, adjusting and managing your material in your head constantly. That is a writer. So I have been writing all this time in my head, but of course these must come out in the form of either published essays or articles or stories, or even in the form of books. What I have been able to write, that too very little. My last compilation of book was 2012. Zengul was last. So since 2012, now almost about 10 years, very little writing. I'm putting them together in a compilation, and I'm going to publish this. That's one. And the other one is a forever ambition. I have this ambition of writing 8 stories. Stories of Tibetan refugees, real life stories. But I want to tell it like adventures. It should be really exciting, that every story must read like an adventure story of survival and romance and death and betrayal and surprise finding of your brother from 30 years ago, and then you realize that your neighbor had always been your sister and you didn't realize. You know, that kind of surprising, amazing stories of survival from the Tibetan communities. And I have been collecting these stories. I want to write that in the form of a book. And that is my most ambitious book that I want to work on. And should be, I want to get it out by at least 1 year, 1.5 years. So this, and then of course in between I may continue to travel and speak and garner more support from India, because I'm born here, I'm educated here. I feel that this country, India, can understand Tibet, and also has a political reason to understand, because what we have always been saying, independence of Tibet is security for India. This is truly making sense today. And it is also a time now internationally, countries like United States and Europe, who always used to appease China and trade with China, today they are raising their voice. Now is the time for India to join the internationally coordinated campaign to make China accountable to the human rights violations that China has been doing, not only in China's occupied countries like Tibet and Kyrgyzstan and southern Mongolia and Hong Kong and Taiwan, but in China itself. So this voice is coming about. So therefore, boycott 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics is also gaining more support, and also internationally, governments are coming to support this. And imagine in 2008, with all our shouting and Tibetans dying in Tibet, did not come to this kind of political situation. Now it is coming. So this is a moment of hope for Tibetans. This is a moment of hope for people of China to really confront Xi Jinping's dictatorship. Right. Chinese Communist parties, almost about 100 years of dictatorship. Now is the time to counter this and make China free and a democracy. This definitely will offer a lot of opportunities for people like Tibetans.
Yeah, that's all for the interview series. Thank you so much for giving us the time. We wish you good luck for upcoming campaigns that we heard before the interview.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Of course. So now I'm going to lead another speaking tour, coast to coast, from Bengal to Gujarat. So I'll be traveling all through the coastal peninsula of India and speaking about Tibet and need to stand up against China.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lasso.